It was my idea. I said, okay, we don't have time for a big reshoot, but I have an idea. When she falls in the water, what if she doesn't survive? She gets eaten by the sharks, and LL Cool J is the hero. Everyone likes him and Thomas Jane. We did a one-day reshoot at Universal Studios Tank, and it was a really simple shoot we did in order to change the ending of it. We did some CGI work on the sharks and stuff like that, but it was a super fast fix, and it saved the movie because the audience got what they wanted. It just goes to show that no matter how smart we think we are, it's the audience who will tell us how it's really supposed to be. Now, when he mentioned the test cards, 21 years later, I'm glad I have a chance to say this. I really hope I did not write "kill the bitch" on my test card because that is really going too far. But knowing who I was as a 21-year-old film fan, I might have been that terrible. So I'm very sorry if I went in a misogynist direction on that. But I think narratively, yes, she's the mad scientist Frankenstein character and did have to pay for what she did. Watching the film recently, I sort of see a little bit more where Rennie Harlin was coming from, because she has that moment where she finally decides to kill the last shark, where she's been resisting it the whole movie, and Thomas Jane says that's the first smart thing you said. As I'm 20 years more mature now, I get that that was maybe supposed to be her redemption, that she realized she had to destroy her creation. But narratively, that probably wasn't enough, and our test audience was probably correct in demanding justice.
I mean, it's kind of like letting Paul Reiser live in Aliens.
Good call. Yes, that's what it would have been like.
It's just, I mean, and also the scene where the shark bites Jim's arm off, and Carter goes to shoot it or trank it, and she lets it go. So you have this
she's
character,
done a lot in the movie that would be pretty hard to redeem.
Yeah, that main, as we discussed a few weeks ago on the show, that main shark, the big shark, it kills most of the crew. I think all of the human people are killed by the big shark. So her letting it go, she's got all of their blood on her hands. It would be very unsatisfying if she didn't die. But I can understand why it had you been the person who'd written "kill the" on the card. That is something that Susan is called throughout the film by Janice, at least in one scene. So it could be possible that the film, the script of the film, had kind of sunk into your brain so much so you're on a level with the other, with the whole the cast of characters of the film. So you could have just been.
I'm not going to make excuses for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was the result of an unevolved young boy in the late 90s thinking it was okay to say that. But now I know there's a constructive way to talk about the narrative demands of the film without being misogynistic.
Okay. Can we teach that to a lot of people after watching certain movies that recently came out and immediate reactions on Twitter?
Hopefully we can lead by example, be the change we wish to see in the world.
That's right. But amen. No, but I'm just so glad to sort of hear about that. And I have another question. So, I mean, Harlan he made an indie, then he got his start with Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, which I really like. I think it's endlessly inventive. There's actually Freddy doing a shark fin with his claw. So I wonder
yeah, that's a cool coincidence. I think 4 is my favorite one, and I like a lot of that series.
So, like the waterbed scene with him in it, like he was doing water gags in the 80s. So to see him, actually, I've talked about this before. Like there's tons of water gags in all of his movies. I mean, Cutthroat Island. But what are your overall thoughts about his filmography? Like, I mean, you've interviewed him, you've kind of seen his evolution, you've been working in the business. Like, how do you feel about his evolution in his career?
Yeah, I've always been a fan. I mean, from when I saw Nightmare 4, which was the first Nightmare on Elm Street I was brave enough to see in the theater because I was about 10 years old when that came out. And I think my favorite part of Nightmare 4 is that all of those films are about who is strong enough to overcome their fears and survive Freddy. And it's never the superficially, quote unquote, strong character. Like in that movie, it's not the martial artist. In the previous movie, it's not the wizard with magic powers. It's always the person who has this quiet strength that everyone overlooks, like Nancy in the original and Alice in Nightmare 4. So I just love seeing Alice own her powers, and when she gets ready to finally do battle with Freddy in the end. I kind of get chills.
She kicks the crap out of him, literally. She throws a lot of kicks.
And that's maybe my favorite Freddy death too, when all the souls escape. Oh, should we include spoiler warnings for Renny Harlin's filmography?
I think most of the listeners would have had them
spoiled
by now.
Don't worry about Freddy. They made 4 more films after that.
He comes back, and so does Alice. Yeah.
Alice is the only one who survived him twice, so that's cool.
Yeah, 4 is like the middle part of a trilogy, isn't it? With the Nightmare, yeah.
That can't be said for
after
Heather.
4, he graduated to big budget studio movies. He did the Andrew Dice Clay vehicle, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which got him the job to do Die Hard 2. And Die Hard 2 ended up coming out first, because obviously there's a bit more of a priority to get Die Hard 2 in theaters, and it was a troubled production because they set it at winter in DC and happened to have a very light winter with no snow. So he was on a time crunch there. And then when Ford Fairlane came out, there was all this controversy against Andrew Dice Clay that it barely played theaters. I think there were some threats of violence at some of the theaters. So they pulled the film out of safety concerns. Oh, wow. But if you watch The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, it's a really fun action comedy with great action scenes. The scene where they're climbing down the Capitol Records building, the hearse chase in the cemetery.
And there's a great water gag with Robert Englund on the boat.
What was the water gag in Ford Fairlane?
When he's in the boat with Robert Englund and he goes underwater, then pops up behind him.
Oh, yeah. I forgot the flooded boat.
Mm-hmm. I like that scene. It's another Renny Harlin water moment.
Yeah. So then I think his next movie after those 2 was Cliffhanger, right? Am I skipping one?
I think you're spot on with that.
And Cliffhanger was a big movie, another very complex production, filming on location on the mountains.
Yeah, the Italian mountains. They went out there.
Yeah. And that was a great movie. The premise essentially Die Hard on a mountain. And that's one of Stallone's best action movies. It actually was a big comeback for Stallone because he'd dabbled in comedies, which didn't do well. So he had to go back to his roots. And Renny Harlin directed a really big hit for him.
The final fight scene in Cliffhanger reminds me a lot of the final fight scene in Fallout. It's a helicopter, side of the mountain, on a helicopter. It's startling. It's quite similar. Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout, and Cliffhanger. I'm probably the only person who remembered that, sitting in the theater watching Fallout going, that's from Cliffhanger. But it just made me love Renny Harlin more, I guess, watching that scene.
I definitely remember the Cliffhanger finale where he hooks the ladder to the helicopter and they pull the ladder off the side of the mountain and he's hanging on to it.
Beautiful.
I don't know if I thought of that while I was watching Fallout because I was very into the construction of the Fallout scene, how it builds and builds, and Fallout is sort of Spielbergian where every time you think that's it, that's got to be the end of the scene, more stuff happens. The helicopter is tumbling down the mountain. You think, okay, that's got to be it, but no, they're still hanging off the side of the mountain.
Climb up, and then there's the hook. I love the end of Fallout.
I love that you brought in Spielbergian, because I'm like, it's Renny Harlin, because I think about Nightmare on Elm Street 4, where you think she's going to die lifting weights, and then she becomes a cockroach, and then gets stuck in a roach motel. So,
Fair.
I'm like once again, I'm the only person on the planet who says Harlinian, but
Spielberg's been copying Harlin for years.
Yeah.
I will start repeating you with Harlinian, and I think Deep Blue Sea definitely has a lot of Harlinian qualities to it, especially the LL Cool J stuff, because it's like he's trapped in the oven and you think, and the shark turns on the oven, you think, well, that's how he dies. But nope, he peels away the paneling and manages to climb up. And then you think, every time you think something is going to get them, it's something else. Like even with the Samuel L. Jackson death.
Oh, we always go back to the Stellan Skarsgård, the Jim's death. Like, you think, oh, he's been bitten in the arm. That's what's going to kill him. No.
Right.
He goes up in the helicopter.
No,
he gets dropped in the water. That's what's going to kill him. No. Just going to use him as a battering ram. That's going to kill him. No, he's still alive after that point. He drowns.
Yeah. There's
Beautiful.
definitely Harlinian and Spielbergian there's a Venn diagram where they overlap.
I heard Spielberg watched it and got jealous.
Sure.
No, not really.
So after Cliffhanger,
Yeah.
so the next movie after Cliffhanger was Cutthroat Island, which was a big Carolco movie. I remember in 1995 when it was supposed to come out, to me it was just the next movie from the studio behind Total Recall and Terminator 2. So I was looking forward to a really big movie, and I didn't even get to see Cutthroat Island in theaters. It played so briefly, but of course it becomes controversial because it was so expensive and it made so little money that it bankrupted the studio. There pretty much was no Carolco after that. They were counting on that movie to give them enough money to greenlight other films, including Arnold Schwarzenegger's Crusades with Paul Verhoeven. But
imagine that movie.
And by that point, Rennie Harlin was married to Gina Davis, who's the star of Cutthroat Island. And they took a lot of heat for being a married couple in that, too, which I'm sure if it had been a big hit, they would have gotten lots of credit for it. But if you watch Cutthroat Island, it's a very solid Rennie Harlin action movie. I finally got to see it in a theater when the New Beverly showed it a few years ago, and I got to tell Rennie Harlin about that, too. He said he's never seen it in a theater. He had, unfortunately, already left the country by the time the New Beverly showed it because he started working in China on Skip Trace and then subsequent. Mm-hmm. So he didn't even get to attend the New Beverly showing of it. But
I love that movie. You can see everything on screen. Sorry to interrupt. I get excited about Harlinian's stuff, but you can see everything's on the screen. It's big, it's brash, it's fun, it's bonkers. It's these weird original $100+ million movies that I miss.
Yeah, that sequence where they escape on the horse and carriage and ships from the port are firing on them. I think that's like his version of the chariot chase in Ben-Hur.
Oh, and you know that they went heavy on the actual effects on set. Like they got a lot in camera on that movie.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. And I'm also very happy that Skip Trace made 131 million worldwide. It's a fun little Johnny Knoxville and Jackie Chan together. Like, that's a good combo.
Yeah, it is.
Two dudes who hurt themselves for over a couple decades. Yeah, no, but I love it. And I guess the next one, did you like Long Kiss Goodnight?
Yes, I did. I remember when that was coming out, I had heard the news about the Shane Black script that sold for an unprecedented, was that $4 million at the time?
Yeah, I think you got the right price. Yeah, $4 million.
So there were a lot of eyes on that film also because it was the follow-up to Cutthroat Island for both Rennie Harlin and Gina Davis. It was Gina Davis's second chance to play action hero, and it was is the script really worth $4 million? Sort of hype is probably not the right word because it wasn't necessarily positive. I think people were gunning for it. And it was a sort of modest October released action movie back, I guess, before they were year-round tentpole movies. And it did better. It did better than Cutthroat Island, obviously, but not enough. Not enough to make it a franchise. And actually, I remember the ending of that changed too. I believe Samuel L. Jackson was supposed to die sacrificing himself in the end of The Long Kiss Goodnight, and because people liked his character so much, they filmed that ending where he's on the talk show having survived.
I love that ending.
So there's a history of Rennie Harlin fixing the endings of his movies at the last minute.
Wow. And I guess Sam Jackson said it was his favorite role in Long Kiss Goodnight, and
I can see that.
yeah,
He gets
it's
a lot
so
of that.
fun. And he said he loved working with Gina Davis because she's on a next level in that movie. I love her in
Yeah.
that.